So let me just quickly summarize what happened since the meeting in Boston. Technically, the first thing that happened was that we converted the existing OpenType code that is shared between Qt and Pango to a Git repository on freedesk.org. That was sort of the first thing that happened. And then at some point in, I think, January, February, Lars and I sat down for a few weeks. Does it work? Oh, yeah. We sat down for a few weeks and we took the shaper code, the shapers for Qt that we had that worked on top of the shared OpenType code in HarfBuzzz, and we removed the Qt dependencies, and we also removed the FreeType dependencies, and we ported the tests that we have in fact. Ported this as well, removed the Qt dependency, or I think this mostly, and we submitted that submitted that, I'm not going to move at all. We submitted that to that Git repository, and I sent an email, or we sent an email afterwards as a result of that. And that is technically basically the current state. What we submitted there is the complete set of shapers and some line breaking or some code to figure out character properties from Qt. We recently licensed the code under the what's the license? FreeType license? FreeType and GPL. The code that's the license, it's dual license, that's the code that all the code in HarfBuzzz is licensed under. So that's the complete support for all the languages that Qt has, and that code and that code works, and the tests still pass. We verified that they fail if we do some things in the shaper. So yes, the tests do work that we have, and yeah, that is sort of the latest that's the state of things. And now since Beat is here, what I would really like to do is to sit down with Peter tomorrow and. So that we can just try to get to write a Pango model that would use the code that we submitted. Because I'm not a big fan of just discussing APIs on the whiteboard, but I really like the idea of working on top of something that works by itself, which is exactly the code that we submitted. That code does work, and so I really like to sit down with Peter tomorrow and try to write a Pango module and for that we should be able to see what needs to be changed in the APIs, what needs to be fixed. But I'm sure there are lots of things that need to be changed. But that seems to be the most pragmatic approach in working with something that works right now and making it work even better. So that's what I would like to do tomorrow. So as a result of that, I'm going to skip that Loch Ness or whatever that trip is tomorrow, this bus trip. And I don't know what's going to happen with the scheduled design discussion tomorrow, but yeah, I'd like to sit down with Peter and use the time that we have to touch the keyboard. And
so the deal is right now it's been tested, HarfBuzzz has been tested as part of a QT example program, right? And we want to make sure it works in Pango as well, right?
Sort of. We have a branch of Qt that uses this. I have not integrated that branch yet to our Qt mainline, because it works great on Linux, but there's some obscure problem with bitnet fonts on the Windows. The code itself works on the Windows since we removed the FreeType dependency. It works quite nice, but there's some obscure problem that I can't integrate things into the Qt mainline until this works properly, and I still need to also test it, or I need to write some graphic code for OS X. But the toolkit works on top of that code, and I want to integrate that as soon as I find the time for it. And yes, so we need to, in order to test the API in a way, we need another implementation of that, and that is Pango is a natural, with its modular design, it's a natural candidate to write a Pango module that would use that. So that's my idea. That's what I would like to do.
Yeah, the other thing, and then Simon, I guess the other question I have is, I know Lars told me a few weeks ago that he wants to put AAT into HarfBuzz for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
related.
It just makes sense.
And but that's not there yet, is that right? Or he's working on it, or?
There's no code from our side, and we haven't started working on it yet. I don't know if we find time to start working on that at all. But I think what Lars was referring to was just that conceptually it makes sense to put it there. We would really like to use, or this is particularly interesting for Qt on OS X, of course, because right now we use Atsui there for rendering the text, and because that's the only way to get lots of the indic scripts working. Because the fonts on OS X, most of the interesting ones have only AAT tables.
Yeah, Lars said that Atsui is, I guess, really slow for rendering.
It's not really sort of, yes. It's a very high-level API, and as a result of that, it becomes very slow, yes. So we would like to use HarfBuzz. We would like to see Qt use HarfBuzz or whatever it is on OS X as well for the shaping part. And for that we need AAT support. So yes, we are interested in AAT support.
When you say AAT, do you mean you want to write your own shaper that will interpret AAT fonts, or you want to use the facilities that Apple provides?
You can't write your own shaper that needs to make it.
Sorry, I didn't.
Do you mean you want to re-implement write a shaper that reads AAT font files directly, or do you mean you want to use Apple facilities that
Apple doesn't provide us right.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Facilities, yes. So yes, it will be.
You're talking about essentially re-implementing AAT.
Yes. So we are very
Can you do that? I thought that was illegal.
Well,
no, I don't think so.
Apple own a number of patents over some of that technology.
I don't know what the patent situation.
Well, I know Quick Draw GX my layout's patented because I'm one of the patent holders on it, so you're not coming after me for.
So as I said, we haven't written any code yet. We don't have any immediate plans to start with that, but we are, as a result of that, obviously very interested in any patches that are floating around that implement AAT support in some way, or that read AAT tables and add some structure on top of it.
A lot of code for that and ICUs.
So that would be very interesting.
It's fairly limited in the sense that it only does the default features and it only handles left-to-right text.
Better than nothing, right?
Yeah.
So that would be very, very, very interesting, of course.
I mean, I'm curious because about the fact that you're going to use your experience in implementing a shaper in Pango to guide your API design, because that's going to limit the conceptual framework to whatever you can fit through the Pango module interface. And we found without working integrated graphic, the module interface of Pango, there's a few areas where it could do with expanding a bit to accommodate some of the features, and those are features which I believe AAT shares with. So I mean, I just want to make sure that there'll be room in there to actually discuss the API at an abstract level as well as building on experience.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't hurt to discuss these kind of things a little bit in advance of them and keep them in mind. On the other hand, we have maintainer here, so we can fix things in Pango.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we could fix Pango to accommodate some of the stuff, then that's great. That would be if we could fix Pango to accommodate that stuff, then I'd be the world's biggest fan of Pango and recommend it everywhere. You'll see me all being open office again. I could do that.
Yeah, you know, another thing, Tim, when I asked Lars when I spoke to him a couple weeks ago that, about what about graphite integration, like HarfBuzzz? And he's certainly not against it. So it's just his,
I mean,
his priority coming from QT is, of course, to get OpenType first, then AAT, and then if somebody wants to do graphite.
yeah, but the thing is that we can't do graphite
If the API doesn't.
if the conceptual framework the API embraces isn't original. We want to try and make sure that there'll be room for graphite, and then one of us.
The good thing is there's nothing that we have. There's no API that we have to freeze or.
Yeah, exactly. This is
I'm
why we
really
want to go.
interested in implementing, doing the Pango thing to get experience on, because Pango is conceptually very similar to Hyperion, because we're talking about OpenType there. So that should be a small, hopefully a smaller incremental step than trying to add something completely different under the API basically. But yeah, it's all a matter of just trying it out. I think I'm fairly enthused that we can change the API and all this.
Okay. So any other questions?
I have a question that's sort of related. This may be being answered a little bit, sort of out of the loop. What is the definition of HarfBuzz? I mean, I thought that HarfBuzz was sort of this OpenType driver, or is it the larger, sort of a larger thing that has this API that you're going to be, you're sort of in the process of developing, or hasn't that been defined yet? Or
I guess in my own mind, I kind of view it as that sort of more fluid thing where you have
unified
a concrete, there's something concrete, there's concrete working code that, just as Seaman described, but that the API is fluid and ready to change and become that greater unified text layout.
Because when I saw the diagram that came out, I don't know.
Oh, that diagram's way too.
Okay, it had a big square in the middle and then had things underneath it. HarfBuzz was
No.
That's not.
That's not right.
Okay.
That diagram's not applicable.
Okay.
So it started as an implementation of the OpenType layout algorithm, and before the first summit last year, both QT and Pango showed interest in moving the shapers down to that layer because they were both using the HarfBuzz code, the current HarfBuzz code, and they had similar code for all the OpenType languages. So there was a common interest to move that down, and that's how this thing started. But when you get to that point where you have a single shaper API, you may as well make it use Windows and add SUI and Graphite too, such that you can have a single shaper API that applications can use. Applications like Scribus, Happy Word, Firefox, OpenOffice.org. So the idea is that if applications don't want to use toolkits, they still have a single library to use as a shaper.
And that is what you're calling HarfBuzz.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's at least the idea.
Okay.
I think we're all flexible on the names.
Maybe that's part of the problem. Which name it is.
So I guess so my understanding is that the library is intended to, or already does, do some line breaking and splitting paragraphs into lines. So
No, not really. It has code, besides the pure text shaping, it has code to determine character properties, line break properties, but it does not implement line breaking itself. That is something that, of course, can be added. It's not there right now. It's trivial to add it technically, but we have to make up our mind whether we want to do it, whether it makes sense to do it or not. We were really...
I laugh because breaking paragraphs into lines is far too trivial.
Exactly, yes, of course. Now I was thinking of moving an existing implementation in it. It's technically trivial, not, of course, writing a...
But the main problem is not always getting the API useful to the higher level, right? Because everyone needs the line breaking algorithm implementation, but providing that in a way that toolkits can actually use it instead of implementing their own is hard.
Yeah.
The good thing about the shaper API is that it's very, very well defined. Yeah.
Yes.
Characters coming, please go out.
Yeah.
So that's the simplest level to cut the library boundary.
That's fine. I'm trying to understand because because there's a lot of, if you do a web search for HarfBuzzz,
So
you find
the reason,
things out.
it might also help, the reason why there's code, or why we added the code to HarfBuzzz to figure out the character properties is also only because the shaper code needs it. There's not only the pure shapers that use the OpenType fields, but we also added code that heuristically tries to position marks, for example, on top of characters. The fallback code, that if there is no OpenType tables available, this is what we added as well, and that code in particular needs these character properties, but some of the shapers do as well. So we just added the minimal set of functionality that we needed to get the shapers up and running, which they do now. The only other thing that is sort of needed, which we did not add, which we decided not to add, were the Unicode character properties, character categories, and mirroring, character mirroring, this functionality. That is currently API and application, and wants to use this what has to provide, because we don't think it makes sense to add big Unicode tables and everything to HarfBuzzz at this point. Because it would be just duplicated. It would still be duplicated. And it's just a few functions that an application basically has to provide in order for the tables to work. So again, that's an API thing that can be sketched out, but it's fairly simple. We'll find out how easy it is if we try it out.
Yeah, the other thing I was thinking with this line breaking hyphenation issue is, even if, for example, right now Tango has this sort of built-in default line breaking, right? But then other applications, if you're going to desktop publishing or some higher level, you might need something that's fancy.
Yeah,
just for Latin script. And then surely, if you start getting into other scripts like index scripts or Thai, or these spaceless scripts like Thai, Rana, right, Northern Thai, Rana, and stuff like this, then you need something completely different, which you're probably going to want only some specific applications to be able to handle it. If you just have the hooks, if there's some flexibility, you can either use some. What's that?
Line breaking.
But that's why
line breaking.
All of the problem.
One of the things we'd like to see is the ability for shapers to send hints back to the line breaker, up to a high level, to the line breaker, just to say these are good places to consider.
Oh yes, that's a good idea.
I mean, we can do that already, and it's one of the frustrating things we might open up as integration, especially with Thai and Burmese, is that
I'm not sure what is the use for that. In which cases is the font better at knowing where to break down the Unicode?
Right. One of the uses is scripts that aren't in Unicode. So we do a lot of work with scripts that aren't yet in Unicode. Now they're implemented with PUA, so the smarts and the fonts cover the behaviour, some of which Unicode would normally specify for its character descriptions. But one of the things it can encode is stuff like good opportunities for line breaking. I mean, the higher levels don't have to use it, but it would be good if it was a hint that they could pay attention to and it made sense. Because I mean, right now, when I first, before Burmese was officially in Unicode, I had a version running in OpenOffice, but I had to have spaces in there because the line breaker broke from Unicode characters, and I had no way of. I knew where to put the breakpoints, but I had no way of passing that information back up to the character breaker to say, to fill in for the stuff you just didn't know.
I think Thai is another good example where, to do really high quality line breaking for Thai, it has to be dictionary.
Yeah.
Well, we already have that in Tango, but the point I'm trying to make is that that's a quite different problem, because line breaking and word boundaries is independent of the font and the shaping engine. And we have two kinds of modules in Tango: shaping modules and language. Shaping engines and language engines. The shaping engine currently there's Arabic, Indic, everything. We are moving to a point to just have one HarfBuzzz module, right? So we already have a Win32 one and S3 one, and instead of the 10 Linux one, we will have a single HarfBuzzz one. On the language engine side, on the other hand, we have started adding more modules. We have one for Arabic now, one for English, one for Thai. The Thai one uses
It's not language. It's not a language problem. It's a script issue. Because the breaking rules for
it's
Thai
not exact.
are shared for Northern Thai.
It
as well.
may
That's
be
different.
the language, but yes.
Well, we know that's not
But
the
the
case.
way we break
Because
it is
you know, we've
is
got-
per script, right? But for example, your Arabic language engine can behave differently if it's for Persian or if it's for
I
Arabic.
mean, I'm not saying that different languages don't have different breaking rules, but I'm saying that we've also got the case right now where our languages and the scripts, line breaking rules operate the same way, even though there's two completely different languages. So it makes it as much a script-based problem, which is why AAT and Graphite, well, I don't know about AAT, but it's why Graphite puts information about line breaking possibilities in the font, because it's something that's definitely script related, and we can always duplicate it if we have to. Well, if it's language related, we leave that up to the application entirely because we can't do anything about it. But
It's either script related, but definitely not font related. I agree
Yeah,
that
I mean-
for the cases that the script is not in Unicode, that's useful, but I don't see any other use in that.
Is there an example of a Unicode script like where you've got a graphite font that's giving
the big scripts about line breaking.
Yeah.
Llama.
Lana?
Yeah, that's.
And how does it do it? Well, how does it decide where the
Well, for the
hints
hints, we have one for Burmese as well. I mean, in the case of Burmese, it provides hints based on knowledge about, which two characters you're never going to get. But there are certain places in Burmese, for instance, there are certain syllables that can always break quickly. Now, that's going to get you, it's not going to get you a high quality line breaking, but if you don't have any line breaking support in the application, it'll get you something that's close.
And you would do the same thing for Thai then, or Lana? Same.
Well, for Thai we don't really do it because there are enough Thai breaking engines out there that we can just leave that up to the app entirely, we don't have to worry about that. But Northern Thai, yeah, we might, if Northern Thai thankfully I think works the same way as Thai, but if it didn't, there's a lot of information about that. Lana, for
Except the
instance,
spelling is quite
yes, spelling is different. So
and
it may
the same words in Thai and Lana are spelled differently. Right? Sometimes.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they're going beyond the fact that if you were to do a mapping of the characters.
Well, there's that, and the Northern Thai's orthography is quite different from the Thai one.
Right.
But the Lamas are from different kettle of fish entirely. Lamas are a different thing entirely as well.
The one L llama or two L llama?
L-A-N-N-A. Yeah, how do you... Yeah.
The Germans.
I mean, with that, you've got some really interesting stacking stuff going on. So some of the basic rules that you might be able to apply using central Thai script or Northern Thai
Yeah, I can't see how you could do it.
don't necessarily apply for Lama script on Northern Thai.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Lama's going into Unicode, and hopefully in the next revision it should appear there.
Yeah, it's already in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're voting on it. Either they're voting on it recently or they're voting on
That's
it.
it.
Right. I'm not going to say it has a final stage to go through. But then it's going to take time before those engines get written for Lama and stuff. And right now we can use the graphite support that we've got.
Right. I see. Okay.
But yeah, it's a minor thing. I mean, we just like someone getting.
Yeah, I mean, you want to basically be able to preserve the flexibility that you already have, and if that's, I mean, it should be possible to preserve that kind of flexibility if the API of HarfBuzz is designed correctly, right? And it shouldn't be expensive for HarfBuzz to provide that.
If the app looks at it and goes, actually, I've got a breaking engine for this, ignore that. That's exactly what we want to do. Because all of this, almost all the scripts need a high quality engine to do the best job rather than what we can provide.
I guess that's a very insightful, nice, succinct actually. The question is the goal of HarfBuzz to do an acceptable job, or is it to do as good a job as possible?
Yeah, I mean,
For line breaking, you mean?
For anything.
In general.
For anything.
I mean, from my point of
Is
view,
it to be the ultimate engine, or just
since we can provide the information, then as good a job as possible happens to be acceptable in this case.
See, I think, it's like if you're doing a Thai web page or a Lana web page, it would be perfectly acceptable to have even a rule-based line breaker.
Sure. If you're doing a
It's good enough, because you don't really care about justification, right? But if you're laying out a book,
well,
if you're doing
I would dispute that strongly, I think. I think it's a bit like saying it's perfectly acceptable for a Western typography to have only capital letters. And there is a sense in which it was true, and there is a sense in which the computer industry did that for decades. Right? And, so it's a subjective thing. And so there's a thing about what are you trying to do.
I guess there's a
Is it acceptable to break Thai in the wrong place because there has been computer software that did that in the past? Well, probably.
No, we wouldn't break it in the wrong place. If you use rule-based, for example, there are simple JavaScript implementations that take like the 30 or 60 most common words in Thai that you know will always appear.
Right.
And use those as sort of places where you know you can definitely break between these kinds of words.
The thing is,
or after these words.
it's good enough, it's legal, it's good enough, it's not operable.
That's right. It's good enough. It's not breaking in the wrong place. It's just you get a kind of ragged edge.
line breaking is not a major problem. Your line might end a little shorter on the path because you messed up. But as long as you don't break in the wrong place, you're fine.
Right.
Because if you break in the wrong place, all of a sudden what was one word in Thai now becomes two, and it changes the meaning of the sentence. So you want to be a little
Conservative.
You need to be conservative.
Yes.
So for high quality typography, you can't be conservative, because then you don't get a nice.
So what we're saying is that we can provide help about what that might be. That doesn't have a line breaker. It'd be nice if there's some way of getting our app to the app or to the line breaking algorithm.
Right.
We really, if the situation arises where actually they know what they're doing and they don't need it, that's great. We want that to be the case, but since it's not, we'd like to give some help. Not every font is going to have line breaking stuff implemented, so it's not something you can count on being there. It may be useful when it is.
Sure.
But you can definitely see possible need for scripts like Lana and Burmese.
Until Lana and Burmese and Thai, the only good way to get really good line breaking on those is to use dictionary-based breakers. The algorithmic ones, they work most of the time and you get it wrong very rarely, but it's noticed that if you're doing high quality typography, much more it matters.
Well, it's actually true in English. Both the word breaking and the line breaking.
Yeah.
And part of the reason why I want to push on this is because when Pango was done, Owen's goals were fairly precise. And they did not include, for example, the page layout program and the needs of the page layout program. I want to make sure that as we go forward, it's possible to write a page layout program. It's possible for things like Begin or Krita or Inkscape, for example, to use the same library as everything else. But it's possible for those programs to do professional quality results. And to do that, you have to have to go from the beginning.
So maybe we should move on and let Sharon tell us